a dream. Almost like a premonition.
I think there's an attack coming.
My lord, this world will fall.
From the lush landscapes of Metropolis, welcome back to Zack Snyder's Justice League chapter by chapter. I'm your host, The Real Brad Bell, and today we will be covering part 3, albeit it is our 4th episode. Remember, we had the prologue, we've covered chapters 1 and 2, and now we will be covering part 3, Beloved Mother, Beloved Son. If you are one of the few following along on HBO Max with me, the real Brad Bell, then we are at 108.46. 108.46. So we're an hour and 8 minutes into this thing. I'm getting ready to click play, and here we go. We have the part 3, Beloved Mother, Beloved Son. Of course, the main focus of this is going to be Ray Fisher Cyborg, but we have some other stuff in here too, some other good stuff. We see the beginning, Central City, and we are going to see our first viewing of a very different Barry Allen. Now, Ezra Miller has his own problems outside of the two WB franchises that he represents. Remember, he's also in the Fantastic Beasts franchise, and of course he is the Flash, not just any Flash, he is the Flash Barry Allen, who has been there's been many incarnations of the Flash over the years at DC, whether it be in the comic books, on the CW show. Of course, you've had Jay Garrick, you had Barry Allen, and Wally West. Now, Barry Allen famously launched the Silver Age of comics. It was like that debut and showcase for DC that starts the Silver Age, along with the Fantastic Four at Marvel, of course, starting a brand new era of comics. But this incarnation of Barry is not one of my favorites. I think Ezra Miller is a fantastic actor. Personal problems aside, if you didn't know, at a convention, he actually grabbed a fan by the throat and pushed them up against the wall and threatened them. Not a very good human being. That doesn't mean he's not a good performer. Now, no excuses. I think he should probably be recast in this role if we're going to hold people to high standards, especially when you have heroes that kids look up to. But let's try to separate that from how we view his performance, because he is a very good performer. This characterization, though, is one of the few things that I think Snyder has done a disservice to as far as DC is concerned. And here we're getting a scene that was completely cut out of the original cut of Justice League, where we see Barry applying for a job at a pet shop or some kind of pet supply store, and then we have Iris West, who has no speaking lines, I believe, other than when they bump into each other in a hello. And we have a slow motion. Of course, it's really fast, but just like Quicksilver in the X-Men movies and in the Avengers movies, it appears slow when we're viewing it. Now, this scene is one that was storyboarded. Those storyboards came out. The unfinished concept renderings came out, so it is cool to finally see this thing rendered fully. How they do the Flash's powers is second to none. I thought it would be very hard to top the Quicksilver time in a bottle kitchen scene from X-Men Days of Future Past, but Zack Snyder has done it here. Just how he runs so fast that he burns his shoes completely off. I think that is a sight to behold. Also, they mention, I believe it's in this film, where they mention that he has actually built his suit using spare parts, and I don't know if he was breaking in and stealing these. I don't know if he was going to crash sites, but basically using parts of planes that can completely endure Mach speed. But here, this is a great scene. He's rescuing Iris. There's this weird thing with the hot dogs here. I will say it was off-putting to me at first, but even though he grabs one of these hot dogs, because if you are following along, you know that this truck that almost killed Iris, it doesn't, because Barry Allen, aka the Flash, saves her, hits a hot dog stand, and he grabs one of these in the process. It is a beautiful scene, and it is a great introduction of this Iris West to this Barry Allen. And we're going to have him use this hot dog, which was awkward in my first viewing, but now that I know what it's being used for, which is going to be to feed the dogs and get them on his side so he can get this job and he can pay for, or work toward paying for his crime scene, his CSI, criminal justice type degree. And we have a really cute scene with Ezra Miller and the dogs. That's what sucks about that situation with Ezra, because every single thing you see him in, he's a very positive, delightful human being. I hate that that's not the case in real life, but you shouldn't physically touch other people. But moving on from Ezra Miller, we're to a different scene where the parademons have went into Atlantis, and they have taken on some of the Atlantean guards and are bringing them to the shore. Of course, they cannot breathe outside the water, at least based on my understanding. Aquaman can, because he's a hybrid. Here we have the Great Steppenwolf, and he is going to start interrogating these members of the Atlantean Guard. Again, we just feel the stakes and the scope. I like how they put the 3 different mother boxes with the people that they did, and I like how they had the scent of the mother box being a way for Steppenwolf, on behalf of Darkseid, to snuff these out. The parademons look really cool here interacting with the Atlanteans. And we see blood. We see the R rating. It is a R rating. I mean, we're not talking about something like The Boys on Amazon, or I don't even think this is as gratuitous as some of the Punisher movies, like Punisher Warzone and the original Thomas Jane Punisher movie. I like how they have this little, it's like a fish thing that goes over, or a scorpion/fish thing that goes over the head of the Atlantean Guard to extract information from him. People were saying, is that Starro? No, it's not. Starro, believe it or not, as a giant kaiju, is actually going to be appearing in James Gunn's Suicide Squad. And now we're to a mourning Lois Lane. I covered in past episodes that her would-be fiance died. I don't think she needs any flack for staying at home. Now, I just want to go back to kind of the Barry Allen thing. I don't want to make this episode a chapter by chapter a rant on this version of Barry Allen, but since we're introduced to him here, we see Lois caressing the cape, by the way. Very cool scene. However, since this is where we're introduced to this version of Barry seems more like a Wally West to me. Like, he's very fidgety, he's twitchy. It's almost like somebody took Wally West from the comics and merged him with Sheldon Cooper from The Big Bang Theory, and I just don't like it. Here we have one of what people thought were the original sins of the DCEU, those clips from the flash drive that Batman extracted from Lex Luthor on the metahumans. Wonder Woman's now watching that same clip that we saw in BVS. And it is cool to see Aquaman in motion here. It's weird because Batman and Wonder Woman never really have any type of sexual tension or romantic chemistry in the comics or any animated thing that I'm aware of, but here they do. Wonder Bat is definitely a shipping thing that many fans of the DCEU kind of want to see. At first, I was totally against it. I will say that Ben Affleck and Gal Gadot have some of the better chemistry together as far as the members of the Justice League here than just about anyone else. So I don't hate it. I don't love it. If Wonder Woman can't be with... I'm one of the people who I enjoy Wonder Woman with Superman. I know that puts me in the minority. Most people enjoy Superman with Lois Lane, or they enjoy Wonder Woman with Steve Trevor. That's the classic, and of course I love Lois. I love Steve Trevor. However, somebody who got into Justice League in the New 52 and then kind of backtracked and read back issues of other runs. I don't know. I just really like Wonder Woman. There's a great Jim Lee cover of Wonder Woman and Superman. I just really rather like Wonder Woman and Superman together romantically. Now, here we're to what is going to be the meat of this chapter, which is going to be the origin story of Ray Fisher Cyborg and the accident which led to the loss of his mother and him having to rely on the mother box technology to become the cyborg. Here we see Ray already is very well equipped when it comes to hacking and things of that nature, for lack of a better word, as he hacked into a fellow student at Gotham. I believe we're at Gotham Central University here, to help their grades because the professor would not allow the student to make up work when they were dealing with a serious death in the family. Now, look, as a NFL fan, I always kind of cringe when I see these, or just a football fan in general, I always kind of cringe when I see these escalated movie scenes, especially here, we're in slow motion. I think this is where Zack went a little overboard with the slow motion. I think it, like the Flash scene, that works well for that character. I don't know if we needed a 3.5, 4 minute montage of Victor Stone doing his best Cam Newton / Michael Vick impression, although he is pretty badass. He's the starting quarterback here. This is a second time we've seen football featured in a DC movie, to my knowledge. You can correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, but we had actually in The Dark Knight, the Gotham Rogues, Bane attacked one of their games, which was at the Pittsburgh Steelers Stadium. I had a friend, Paul, who actually drove to Pittsburgh with his girlfriend, now wife, Sarah at the time, to be a part of that. I think that scene looks way better, but I just like those movies better. And you know I like this movie as well, though. Here we have this great heart-to-heart between Vic Stone and his mother. Of course, tragically, here in a minute, there will be a car accident. She will lose her life. He will lose most of his body. And you see he has this loaded and complicated relationship with his father, Silas. This is great acting here. Ray Fisher had every right to be extremely pissed off for everything that went down at the hands of Joss Whedon and Jeff Johns cutting him out of the movie, because he is, as Zack Snyder said, the heart of this movie. He probably has the single best performance of the movie. And here we see Silas being given the bad news that his wife is lost, but his son may live, but doesn't have a very good chance. My wife is actually a healthcare provider, and as we watched this together, she commented on how realistic, and she's in critical care, she commented on how realistic the sit-up was here of Ray Fisher on this ventilator, because unfortunately, sadly, this is something she has seen a lot lately. But sometimes that stuff's glossed over, and Abby kind of my wife, Abby, kind of rolls her eyes at that kind of thing. And here we see Victor brooding. I get that this is not everybody's favorite interpretation of Cyborg. I like Cyborg. My most experience with Cyborg coming into this was actually, again, that New 52 Justice League run. I have not watched the old Justice League cartoon all the way through. I have not watched the old Teen Titans cartoon. I've seen a little of the Justice League, but I need to go back and watch that and Justice League Unlimited straight through. This is a character so many people, especially fans of the Titans, the Teen Titans, have an attachment to. And his catchphrase, "Booyah," which was uttered throughout almost every incarnation of that character, was fed to Ray Fisher as a line by the great comics writer Jeff Johns. And for some reason, Ray Fisher had a huge beef about that. He thought it was stupid, and Zack Snyder thought it was stupid as well. I don't think the booyah was stupid. I think it was the timing Cap didn't say Avengers Assemble in the first Avengers. I think if we had got a booyah down the line when we were more connected to these characters and they were established, that would have been different. Maybe it was just too soon. As the comics fan in me, actually like the booyah, believe it or not. That's one thing I did like from the first one. Here we see the heart of the movie, Cyborg, dealing with his powers for the first time. My wife said, oh, so he's Iron Man, not being too familiar with Cyborg. He's not. It's different. It's similar. There's always those analog comparisons between Marvel and DC. He was kind of forced in the role to be Cyborg based on his physical condition and the work of Silas, whereas Tony Stark chose to be Iron Man. And here he has to decide how he's going to use this great power that's been given to him. He is basically hearing, seeing, perceiving every telecommunication and internet activity going on at one time, which is I wouldn't want to bear that burden. But it is cool how Zack shows this, because it shows the non-cyborg Ray Fisher here, Victor Stone, and he is able to separate himself from that version of his body, and we see him kind of more civilian, and we see the things he has access to, like the nuclear launch codes. He holds the fate of the free world in his hand, and he's going to use that, as we'll see here soon, to make people's life better. We see the bull and the bear of the stock market, and he is going to influence that here. A lot of people thought that was a bit heavy-handed. I don't know, maybe it was. But this just shows you how much Zack wanted to put on the Cyborg character, and rightfully so. Ray Fisher is on par with, I think, the acting chops of Ben Affleck. So it was his burden to bear in this role, and I thought he did a really good job. I hope... and Ray Fisher, the only other thing I saw him in was True Detective Season 3, where he played the son of Marshall Ali, and he was fantastic in that. He's fantastic in this. He's 2 for 2 in my book. I just hope all the toxicity around his relationship with Warner Brothers, and it's from Warner Brothers' side, not him, I hope that doesn't stop other studios from wanting to work with Ray Fisher. I don't think it's a case that he's difficult. Based on my knowledge, I think it's more of a case that he was dealt a bad hand when Zack had to leave this because of the suicide of his daughter, Autumn. And here we see how he's going to wield this power to make a difference in people's lives, as he is witnessing a young waitress who is a all-around good person struggling to make it, and gives what little bit she has to help others. And it's a very heartfelt scene here. What we see. This almost brought me to tears. There was one moment later on that does bring me to tears in Justice League, the Snyder Cut, which we'll talk about later. But this one here of this lady getting evicted and seeing how Cyborg will aid her, really, really emotional. Going back to Cyborg, though, he is a character that a lot of people have a strong attachment to. That Titans book by Marv Wolfman and the great George Perez, that was almost on par with Claremont and Byrne and Dave Cockrum's X-Men, which were like legendary runs. And the Teen Titans, while not the X-Men, I get that they're not there, they are a notch below that as far as best-selling books of the 80s. Here we see this struggling mother trying to get money out of her account. She only has $11, and now Cyborg says she won some type of Gotham lottery, and she is given $100,000. If only the struggling could be given this help in real life. And this was a woman who deserved it. She was falling on a hard time. And this is the different kind of stuff superheroes can do that in a 4-hour cut of the movie we can see. It's interesting because I saw the premiere of Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and not to go all Marvel here, but Falcon was wanting to get a home loan for he and his sister. And one of the loan agents at the bank said to Tony Stark not set anything up for you guys. And of course he didn't, which is a travesty. But here we see Cyborg with his opportunity to give monies to the less fortunate. But this mother box that Silas used to essentially bring him back to life is another burden he must bear. And the parademon, as we know, they're picking up on the scents here. The parademon have picked up on this scent. Now we see the great Billy Crudup, who I know from Almost Famous. He was also Dr. Manhattan in another Zack Snyder DC movie, The Watchmen. And Billy Crudup here is playing Dr. Henry Allen, who of course was framed for the murder of his Barry's mother, his wife. Of course, if you've ever read a Flash comic, watched a Flash TV show, you know historically it was the Reverse Flash Zoom Eobard Thawne who killed the mother of Barry Allen and put the blame on Dr. Henry Allen to ruin Barry's life. That's stuff that the early CW Flash really got right so well. I think this is a hard thing for Ezra to do too, because as much as you have the budget limitation of the CW Flash, and as much as it's become monotonous with some of these later seasons, and it probably needs to come to a conclusion, I thought Grant Gustafson portrayed the Barry Allen version of the Flash so well right off the page. I mean, it's not like Robert Downey Jr. to Tony Stark level. It's not like Patrick Stewart to Professor X level, but it's up there with modern superhero portrayals as far as bringing the characteristics to life from page to screen. And here Ezra's just not doing that. It's not because he's not capable. I think if he was given the direction and the script, he is capable. He's probably a more talented chops-wise actor than Grant Gustafson, which is why he's in big studio movies and Grant's in CW shows. But at the same time, I think if I had to pick a better portrayal of Barry Allen, it would be Grant's portrayal on the CW DC shows. They should have just made this Wally West. I don't know why they didn't. And it's going to be interesting to see the stuff with Ezra down the line. This Flash movie is supposed to reset / set up / do a whole bunch of heavy lifting for the DC multiverse that's coming out. I think it's in 2022, and I hope Ezra can get his life straightened out by then. Here we see Ezra living as a loner here off the train tracks. This is kind of awkward. There is no Joe West or anything like that, like in the Flash TV show, because of course he just met Iris, so how would he know Joe West? But here he is out in like an abandoned train station or loading dock for trains, and he has all this stuff. I'm guessing he didn't steal it like Quicksilver did, but he doesn't have a job. I don't know why he needed this elaborate base of operations. This is the kind of stuff about the Snyderverse that's just like, did we need this? I will say this. So this movie came out in 2017, the original cut, and I say that because this is one scene, Bruce meeting Barry, in which you pretty much kept everything the same. And it was a scene that, rightfully so, it worked pretty well. Now, they did eliminate that stupid brunch joke, thank God. It was just ridiculously written in there by Joss Whedon. So they got rid of that. But for brunch aside, this is essentially the same scene here between Bruce Wayne and Barry Allen, between Ben and Ezra. And they have great chemistry, but by God, this seems like eerily similar to when Tony Stark went to Peter Parker's Queen's apartment and recruited him during Civil War. They have that exact same dynamic. Do I think it was ripped off? No, because even though this came out in 2017, they had probably shot this. It had been written, I imagine, before Civil War came out. At least I hope so. There is a Great scene here of Barry in slow motion, of course, fast for him, flash time, speed force, whatever you want to call it, dodging the batarang. It's also weird, too, that when Bruce first sees Barry on that footage from the flash drive, he's got this long hair and he's kind of grungy. Maybe they should have just left that. It was totally 90s, like it's something that would be like in a 90s Justice League reboot, I feel like. But at the same time, I think it would have worked to differentiate him. And I'm sorry if I'm sounding too hard on the Ezra Miller version of The Flash, because he has such cool scenes, especially toward the end of this film. I'm just trying to get on board with it. That's one of the things that I think kind of irks me about the DCEU. And this is one of the things that is going to continue here. I'm a huge Flash fan. Let me say I'm a pretty big Flash fan. I don't have like Flash memorabilia all over my house or anything, but I've read a couple runs of the character. I fell in love with him after the first season of the CW show for sure. And he's definitely top 10. I mean, if you're not a DC fan, to me, he is the closest thing as far as heart is concerned that the DC universe has to a Peter Parker, and that with great power comes great responsibility. Here we have Bruce telling him his superpower's rich. No need to cut that joke. It was great. It worked in the original. It worked here. And we have the AFSP.org billboard, which is awesome because that is a suicide prevention charity that the Release the Snyder Cut movement has raised a ton of money for, in memory of Zack Snyder's daughter, Autumn, who committed suicide, stopping him from finishing Justice League in the first place. Here we have Alfred and Wonder Woman, Diana, Gal Gadot, making tea. Some people didn't like this because they thought it was Jeremy Irons' Alfred mansplaining how to make tea to Wonder Woman. I thought that was a bit of a stretch. I mean, I don't think it has anything to do with him being a man explaining this to a woman. Of course, I am saying that as a man, so take it for what it's worth. At the same time, Alfred's an English butler. If anybody's going to know how to make tea, it is going to be him. This Alfred is so hands-on. I believe I mentioned that in earlier episodes of Justice League, chapter by chapter. But it is kind of cool to see it throughout the course of the film. And here we see him working on these gauntlets and seeing if they will stand up to some of this alien tech that Alfred and Bruce have collected over the course of the DCEU. You can put Gal Gadot with anyone. She is a movie star. I don't know if she is a great actress, but she has the look, she has the charisma to carry a scene, carry a film, and thus carry a franchise. This is going to be a weird comparison, but my opinion on Gal Gadot is she is the closest thing to Arnold Schwarzenegger, I think, since Arnold Schwarzenegger came from nowhere as the bodybuilder out of Austria. She is the model out of Israel, and I don't know if she has those great chops like Ben Affleck does acting, but she just oozes that charisma. She is a movie star, and she can elevate a mediocre scene to a good scene and a good scene to a great scene. There's this scene in Wonder Woman 1984 where she's overusing the lasso of truth in a highway action scene in the Middle East, and even though the logistics of it don't quite make a bunch of sense, and there's some ludicrous stuff going on as there is throughout that entire movie, her in that role as an action star makes it work and makes it one of the better scenes of the movie. And when you know a movie star, you know there's great actors who I would say are not movie stars. Those two things are completely different. Some are both. Heath Ledger, the late Heath Ledger, after The Dark Knight, when he passed away, of course he passed away before that came out, he died as a movie star and a great actor. I would say someone like Sylvester Stallone, movie star. not a great actor. Someone like the late Philip Seymour Hoffman or Gary Oldman, great actors. The best chops on the planet, but they're not movie stars. Take Leo. To me, he is the personification of being great at both, and that is hard to do. They're few and far between. That's why they get pretty much any role with any director that they get. And here we have Wonder Woman recruiting Cyborg. This is where you need that 4-hour runtime. He was asked, he being Zack Snyder, to basically do the first phase of the Marvel movies along with the Avengers in the same movie. And it was a Herculean task, to say the least. They're pretty much asking him to lift Mjolnir. And as he's starting to move the hammer, they knock him away from it, it feels like. Again, different universe, though. This is what happens when you do a commentary for a film. Solo, especially. You make comparisons to Marvel. It's just inevitable when you talk Marvel and DC. It's like Coke, Pepsi. It's like Yankees, Red Sox. It's like WWF, WCW back in the day. It's like Apple and Samsung. It's just, you're going to have to compare the two elephants in the room. There's a few gravesite scenes in here, and here we have Cyborg visiting the grave of his mother, Eleanor, and you see his grave beside her. So we are to believe that everyone, aside from his father Silas, believes that Cyborg has passed away. This is heavy CG, no doubt. It looks pretty good. I mean, they spent all the money. I think it's kind of cool how he's burying this mother box, the thing that kept him alive, in his would-be gravesite if he would have died. I guess you could argue that Victor Stone passed away and Cyborg lived. And now we're back to seeing Ryan Choi, who we know eventually becomes the Atom. If you're a DC fan, the second Atom after Ray Palmer, was mentioned in the last episode, who is interacting with Silas Stone at Star Labs. Star Labs is prevalent throughout the entire DC Comics universe. That being said, you mostly see Star Labs with the Flash. You see it everywhere, but again, especially with the TV show, we know that's kind of the headquarters where Team Flash operates out of. And it's interesting here. It appears that Star Labs, I'm sure they got locations all over the DCEU, but it appears this main version of Star Labs is in Gotham, and it's most closely associated with the Cyborg character. I really need to read up on Cyborg. I recently ordered, I got to mention this because I'm excited about it. I was able to sell off some omnibuses that had went out of print, and just by doing that, by selling off 1 or 2 books, I was able to order the 5 volumes of the classic Teen Titans run, and that is going to, I believe, really beef up my Cyborg knowledge. So that's one of the many reasons I bought that set of books, and I cannot wait to own it and put it on my shelf here. I think this has been fun, guys, doing this. I know we're kind of about halfway through with this rewatch of Zack Snyder's Justice League. It was definitely, ambitious on my part to do this solo, but I'm glad I have you guys along for the journey. I know that Silas wishes he had someone here because we got the Parademon who's in there. And here we have Commissioner Gordon appearing for the first time here, played by J.K. Simmons. And I believe the cop that he's interacting with is Crispus Allen, who, if you've read Gotham Central by Ed Brubaker, with art by Michael Lark, there's Ed Brubaker, there's another writer. I'm trying to look over at my shelves for the Gotham Central here. Hold on, I'm going to lean over. Greg Rucka, and it is Crispus Allen. Okay, that's pretty cool. And you see that this is a veteran Batman, because this is when you see J.K. throw out here as Commissioner Gordon. he's been fighting crime in Gotham for 20 years. He's not going to go bad now. But again, it's cool to have you guys along with me as we go through this. I appreciate you listening, wherever that is. And it is a break from the regular podcast. I get that. Many of you love the Confirmed Epic podcast, and that's my baby. And I cannot wait to get back to that. But I think now's the time to see this through. The Snyder Cut had a lot of build-up, and I believe we are doing it, no pun intended, justice here with the Epic review in place of the Confirmed Epic podcast for about a month and a half or so. And here we have Barry Allen meeting Diana. Now, he does have a strong crush on her. I mean, who wouldn't? But at the same time, I don't know if they really needed to play into that. This is where Chris Terrio helped write this script. And Chris Terrio is a terrible writer. He also wrote the Rise of Skywalker. And Chris Terrio is someone who understands iconography, but he really doesn't understand the character development that makes that iconography pay off, which is one of the problems in the theatrical cut of BVS, for instance. There's all these iconic moments. Think of Superman ripping off the Batmobile's top and Batman facing Superman. It's like, wow, that's an iconic money shot. Holy crap, it should be every Batman and Superman's fans' desktop wallpaper instantaneously, it feels like. But at the same time, it's like the character development was not there in the theatrical cut. I will argue it is there in the director's cut, and we did review both the theatrical and the director's cut of BVS. If you want to go back and listen to those, they're in the 40s or 50s, somewhere in there. And here we have the air bubble so Mira can communicate. I think Amber Heard was a good choice for Mira. I mean, would I like to have seen Jessica Chastain? Sure. But Amber Heard does a fine job as Mira. Now the Atlanteans are going to have to, it appears, defend their mother box. And this is going to be the last one that Steppenwolf needs before he gets to Cyborg. So still 2 more to go, because he has the Amazonian one, if you recall. And this is where you see the mythology of the DC universe on full display. I'm impressed with how well Warner Brothers has done underwater. If you look at the James Wan Aquaman movie, and here we have an epic fight between Steppenwolf, the Atlantean guards, Mira, and of course Arthur Curry. Jason Momoa's Aquaman will join us here in a minute. I mean, ever since Waterworld tanked in the 90s with Kevin Costner, Hollywood has been like, no way we're going to do any type of underwater stuff. It's way too expensive, unless it was like someone such as James Cameron with the gravitas to pull off that ask. I don't think studios were, and I'm talking about with Avatar there, I don't think studios were willing to exert the money. And I know this is all CG now, but still, any water stuff is, if you don't know, is super expensive to do. Warner Brothers willing to roll the dice with that, with Aquaman, here with the Aquaman Atlantis scenes in Zack Snyder's Justice League on full display. And here we see Mira, got a cool scene how she can just manipulate the water, drowning Steppenwolf. Of course, he slaps her away. It's so weird that Aquaman was the butt of so many jokes in the 90s and 2000s. If any of you guys watch Entourage, Vinny Chase, the main character on there, actually, speaking of James Cameron, starred as Arthur Curry, a.k.a. Aquaman, in a spoof film. Of course, it was real in the context of the show of Aquaman. Here we have a truly badass Jason Momoa coming to Mira's rescue, although I would argue she did a pretty good job holding her own against this new god, Steppenwolf. And this is a different Aquaman. And if you don't like Zack Snyder and you don't like his vision for these movies, okay, I'm fine with that. But please don't tell me that you don't like most of his casting. And I think Aquaman and Wonder Woman maybe being the two best of those, as much as I love all the others, with the exception of Ezra Miller, as we mentioned earlier. He didn't go the route of blonde hair, blue-eyed Arthur Curry, as he's always portrayed in the comic books. He got a Pacific Islander in Jason Momoa, and I think that has been a decision that's paid off well for Warner Brothers. Unlike Justice League, Aquaman made $1 billion, and here, even though he comes to Mara's defense, he's not able to stop on his own. Maybe when he's united, we'll see, but he's not able to stop on his own. Steppenwolf, as Steppenwolf uses the boom tube to exit. And here we have one of our early interactions between Mera and Aquaman with the speech bubble. It sounds weird saying speech bubbles because it's like you're talking about the text in a comic book, but that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about like an air bubble here where they can communicate. And she is really encouraging Aquaman, Arthur Curry, to seek the throne of Atlantis. And we'll see that play out when he goes up against his half-brother, Orm, played by Patrick Wilson in Aquaman. Aquaman was so successful, they greenlit Aquaman 2 not too long after that. And they also greenlit a spinoff called The Trench. The Trench was an area of the ocean that was introduced in, speaking of the New 52 again, but it's so influential in this current strain of DC movies. It was introduced in Jeff Johns', I think, definitive Aquaman run from the DC New 52, if I had to pick. Probably besides the Scott Snyder, not Zack. Scott Snyder, the comic book writer, Zack Snyder, the director. Probably besides the Scott Snyder Batman, I would say that Jeff Johns' Aquaman was the most definitive run to come out of the New 52. Maybe the most, since that is the definitive run on that character, whereas a character like Batman has had many good runs. But post that, especially with these films and Aquaman being a big deal, DC has not skimped on the Aquaman book. They put great creative teams behind Aquaman. People like Colin Bunn, people like Dan Abnett, people like Kelly Sue DeConnick. So Aquaman's in the characters in a good place at DC Comics, I would say. And now we see that a parademon has visited the apartment of Cyborg. He's in Gotham, and he looks up, and of course, a staple of Gotham City, he sees the bat signal. And here we have another Zoom meeting, it looks like, coming between Steppenwolf and Desaad. Maybe not. Maybe there's no Zoom meeting here. He is inserting the other mother box to where they had their last Zoom meeting. And again, we're in Chernobyl. We see the sickness, if you will, of the mother box start to engulf this area of, I believe, again, going back to last episode, Chernobyl. From the out, it is our second Zoom meeting with Desaad. From the outside, it's red. From the inside, it's not. They got rid of the red skies that were in Whedon's Justice League. I like the red skies as a DC fan. If you don't know, red skies are huge in DC Comics. They usually mean some crap's about to go down. The red skies most famously are associated with Marv Wolfman and George Perez's Crisis on Infinite Earths, when there was about to be some stuff that was going down with the Anti-Monitor there, and Harbinger. What ended up happening was, and we're at the end of part 3. That went by fast. Part 4, so we're going into part 4 of the Change Machine, and that will be on the next episode. I am pausing at about 1 minute and 53 seconds. But the Crisis on Infinite Earths, that meant that they needed to watch out. One of the pieces of the multiverse was potentially about to be consumed. But read that story if you're interested in any of this DC stuff, it's one of the definitive crossovers for all of DC Comics, Crisis on Infinite Earths, and just see how Red Skies played a big part in that, played a big part in the Whedon cut, and even though we have that Red Globe, they don't play a big part here. So, currently, we are halfway through our journey here. We still have a few more chapters to go, and then the epilogue. So we're moving on to chapter 4. There's only 7 chapters, but the epilogue is a separate chapter. And once again, thank you so much for joining us on this episode of Zack Snyder's Justice League chapter by chapter and going along with us on this epic journey through this mythological beast that is this 4-hour cut of the Justice League. If you are enjoying the show on iTunes, if you could give us 5 stars, that would be awesome. If you could give us a review, that would be even better. But more importantly, how you can really help the show is if you are watching on YouTube, give us a thumbs up. But the best thing you can do to help this show is to hit the subscribe button on YouTube. Our subscriber numbers are going way up. I appreciate each and every one of you who have been doing that. If you are someone who enjoys your pods on Spotify, we're on there as well. Just follow us on Spotify. And of course, you can always find any podcast put out from me at its official home, its original home, although it's easier to find us on YouTube now, youtube.com/confirmedepicpodcast. But you can always find us at its original home at theepicreview.com. That's thepicreview.com. Please follow me on Twitter. That way you know when the newest episodes are coming out. The REEL Brad Bell, the real Brad Bell on Twitter. And once again, from the lush landscapes of Metropolis, we are out.
The bell's been rung. Out in the dark, among the stars, the god is dead.